Welcome back. This is day 2, I guess, of our little ongoing daily series. Today's going to be melodic, what did I refer to it as? Melodic ear training. Yeah. So this is one of my favorite things to do with triads that doesn't really get talked about or noticed kind of ever. So, yesterday we did some kind of like boot camp type work, just trying to master triads and see the fretboard. Today we're just going to pick one triad and we're just going to sit with it and we're going to add a fourth note to it. We call this idea quadratonics. It comes from my teacher Stefon Harris. He called them quadrads. Kind of the same idea. So I'm going to take C major. If you don't know your basic C major triad, not your 7 C major diatonic triads, just the C major triad that we talked about yesterday. If you need help finding that, there's a link above or below this video somewhere. You can click it and just look for the big blue button with today's date on it. It'll have a PDF attached. Same PDF as yesterday. So we're going to listen to these 4 notes. We're going to play around with them and see what we hear. The goal is to try and learn to distinguish all 4 of them, not using intervals. We're not looking to like memorize the opening of a song that starts with these 2 notes and what that song sounds like and then compare it to this, and then we're not looking for any of that. We're just looking for emotions and melodic function. Like, what do these notes feel like emotionally and how do they want to move? And then before this mini class is over, this 30-minute session, we're going to take this very small bite-sized piece of sort of melodic content and we're going to try putting it on top of some different chords, okay, some kind of polytonal stuff. So it's going to start very simple and then it's going to end relatively advanced. But we're not really going to be doing anything that advanced. We're just going to be applying it in an advanced way. Before we jump in and start listening, it's worth keeping in mind that while it's only 4 notes, right, I'm only going to be playing a C triad and 1 additional note. While it's only 4 notes, this is over 50% of the major scale. Okay, all 4 of these notes are going to exist inside of the key of C major, but this is 4 out of the 7 notes of the C scale. So if we can learn to hear these and control these 4 notes, it will expand our ear to really understand what's happening in the majority of the C major scale. Okay, if we want to think about it in terms of the C pentatonic scale, this is 4 of our 5 pentatonic scale notes, so it's almost the entire pentatonic scale. It's also worth keeping in mind that these 4 notes, while it seems really small, make up 1/3 of the entire fretboard, because we only have 12 notes in music. So if we can learn to hear the emotion and the function of 4 notes, it actually unlocks 1/3 of every available note that we could use melodically speaking. Okay? We are going to do this in the context melodically of a C major triad, but that doesn't mean we're playing in the key of C major, which we'll see before this class ends. Again, if you guys have questions, feel free to throw them in the comments below. Yesterday it didn't really show me any of them until after the session ended for some reason. I don't know why. So if you're in the study group and you see anybody asking questions that I'm not responding to and you know the answer, feel free to chime in and let them know. Otherwise, when I wrap this up, I'll go through and I'll try and give some quick answers in the comments. So we're going to take the C major triad. We're just going to add a D note. I call this tension 2. This is different than the Coltrane. Right, we're not looking for digital patterns. We're looking for emotion and function. So I'm going to start off by just playing around in a boring ass C major triad with nothing added to it. It's going to be really vanilla and bland and flavorless. And then I'm going to add the D note in, and we're going to hear what this note does to the C triad and the emotion it brings. sound really boring right now, very like elementary school, but we should be very aware of how perfectly resolved the C note is. It's the root note of the triad. It seems obvious to point this out, but we need to point this out. The C note is completely, perfectly still. My movement, I like to do body movements for my different notes to help me internally feel them so that I'm not singing intervals. My movement for C is like I kind of like stomp on the ground and like put my fist down. Like this is it. I'm just putting my flag in the ground, putting my foot down. Right? It's complete. It's done. Versus the third of the triad, which is it's like a very sweet note. These are emotions. I'm not asking you to sing intervals here. The fifth of the triad is very strong. It's like a column lifting everything up. And then the root note throws it back onto the ground. Okay. Can you feel these little emotions with me? That's a tension note. Did you feel how it wanted to move? Okay, that's the D note. That's tension 2. I call tension 2 because it's the second above the C note. Tension 2 is a very easy and relatable tension note. Sort of like a question mark. Call it Eeyore. Okay, so if you're new to melodic triads, if you're just checking this out, I cannot recommend enough that you just sit with this idea of a C major triad and a tension 2 and just improvise with it. You're not playing standards right now. This is just learning to explore the anatomy of melody, getting to know these few notes. We can apply this to jazz settings, for sure. Charlie Parker used this sound. Everybody uses this sound in their own ways, but it's super helpful to sit and just listen to it and see what it gives us. Right, learning to hear that tension 2 and it wanting to pull down, or it can pull up. Can you start to hear and feel these 4 notes? They each have their place. C is the sun at the center of the solar system. Always feels complete when we come back to it. D, tension 2, is kind of this question mark tension note. Versus E, which is really sweet, the third. And then there's G, the fifth, which is like this structural column that wants to lift everything up and slam it back down to the root note. It's like a seesaw, the root and the fifth. The same phenomenon that happens with chords when we talk about a 5-1 dominant tonic, right? G7 to C6, that happens with the individual notes also. The fifth of the scale resolving to the first of the scale. major triad with tension 2. So I'm keeping the same structure at work, just moving to a new key now. How about E flat major, tension 2, D, F, B flat, E flat, C. Triads at the moment, just seeing what they sound like, but always with tension 2. Part of that is just for my own fretboard mastery and control. I may or may not actually use it over a standard. I probably would in the right context. But let's just explore what this means in terms of jazz harmony, because it seems like such a simple idea. The assumption is that we would use this over a C chord, which we could. This is a usable piece of melodic information. Right? Charlie Parker, now's the time. That's a major triad tension 2. He also uses it in Little Suede Shoes. Major triad, tension 2. Fifth. Chromaticism back down. So let's try putting this over some different chords and harmonies and see what happens. Let's get rid of C. Let's try A flat major 7 shell voicing. So there's no fifth in this chord. Still playing a C major triad, but now I'm putting it over an A flat major 7 shell. Okay, so now we're getting into polytonality. Very digestible because I'm not running around inside of any scales. I'm mainly playing a C major triad. 75% of the melody notes I'm playing are 1, 3, 5 C major, and then I'm adding tension 2. How about B flat 7? Notice melodically we still feel complete when we get to the C note, but I'm playing over a B flat dominant chord. That was a B flat note that I just added in. Notice how it feels like the flat 7 wanted to pull back up to C. So the B flat note feels like a flat 7 chord tone or scale tone over a B flat dominant chord. classic dominant 7 that most of us are taught to play, which is 1-3 flat 7. So for B flat, right, B flat, D, F, E flat. Resolving to C note. Can you hear how much more colorful it is? To my ear, the C major triad is way more colorful. It doesn't work in every situation over a jazz standard, but effectively this is tonicizing or making stable the 13, the sharp 11, and the 9 of a B flat 7 chord. Right, because we're hearing the C note as the most stable, and then E and G are the 3rd and the 5th. C, E, and G, when we put it over a B flat 7 chord, gives us the 9, the sharp 11, and the 13. But because it's organized as a triad and not just a series of random upper extension notes, the sort of strength and stability and organizational structure of the triad makes it feel almost perfect, like everything is normal and should be the way it is. The weirdest part about this, if you want my opinion, is that besides the fact that the B flat note over a B flat dominant 7 chord feels like the flat 7, it sounds like the flat 7 of a scale, and besides the fact that the C note, which is actually the 9, the chord tone of a 9, feels like the most stable, the other really bizarre thing is that our tension 2 note, the note that we feel that it wants to move, that D note should be a strong, stable chord tone, one of the most stable chord tones we have, but it's actually, in this particular color palette, it's actually the tension note. Okay, so we want to be able to develop our ear to hear the C note as melodic do, the most stable melody note we have, and the D note as a melodic tension note. We want to be able to hit that D note knowing that we can pull it down to C or up to E. Triads, of using a triad as the skeletal structure of melodic phrasing. So I'm not playing any riffs that I know. We could discuss this as being related to a scale. Okay, this would be like a Lydian dominant chord if we want to get kind of chord scale, modal thinking. So it comes from F melodic minor. That's kind of the sound I'm implying, but notice that the F note is not the most stable note. So it's not really F melodic minor. We could argue that it's the 4th mode of F melodic minor because the 4th note in F melodic minor is B flat, and I'm playing over a B flat 7 chord, but B flat's not the most stable note either. B flat feels like the flat 7. The C note is the most stable. So if we want to break it down in terms of theory and understand from a scalar perspective, well, we could try to explain is that we're using the key signature or the scale of F minor, F melodic minor, but we're playing melodically based on the fifth mode of it, but we're putting it harmonically on top of the fourth chord in it. But to me, that's just way too confusing. Like, that just makes no sense to me. I mean, it makes sense, but why go through all of that to explain the sound? The simpler way to explain it for me is just to try and think like a piano player who might play a B flat, a really basic B flat dominant chord, and then just put a C major triad on top. That's where all these ideas that I talk about kind of comes from, is studying piano harmony. About that note yet today. That's our tension 4. Tension 4 is a very nasally, whiny, annoying note. It's like a little kid throwing a tantrum. Tension 2, that whiny tension 4, that is the F note, which is why I say it's like silly to think of this as an F melodic minor scale, even though it might share the exact same pitches, because the F is not only not stable, it's really not stable. So, you know, you feel how resolved it is? Super weird stuff happens when we start thinking in terms of triads. Let's do like one or two more really quick harmonic versions of this so we can hear this in a couple of other contexts, and then we'll wrap this up. C major triad, I'm not going to leave the C major. What if we put it over, I don't know, how about a D minor chord? Again, C still feels in. Okay, if you're in the study group and you've been hanging with me for a while, you know this is not the primary quadratonic for this chord. Normally we would want to hear tension 4 because it gives us the F note, which is an important note, but it still works for this sound. Flat third moving up to the major third, because it's E flat moving up to E natural. But I'm playing over a D minor chord, which means technically speaking I'm playing the flat 9 up to the natural 9. It shouldn't sound bluesy or hip or correct if you read the theory books. over an F major 7. But it still feels like the most perfect resolution note. So if you want to play with this, I would recommend taking these couple of steps, and I'm going to wrap up with this. First, make sure you know your C major triad, not your 7 diatonic C major triads. We're not trying to develop speed and technique and running around inside of a diatonic key right now. We just want to know the major triad, the C major triad shape. Start with one position. If you're brand new to playing with triads this way, just start with one position. Shed it for a few minutes until you can really see it, and then start listening for those emotions. Start noticing how in and perfect the C note is. Okay, you can steal my movements if you want, kind of like stomping on the ground and looking very serious every time you hit C, every time you hit the E, the third. It's this really sweet, pretty, whispering, smiling sound. And then the fifth is like this strong structural column that's lifting everything up in the air so that we can slam it back to the ground for the root note again. Then check out tension 2. Okay, those are the 4 emotions of this quadratonic. Make sure you're hearing the C note as the most stable, that everything wants to pull back to, and make sure you're hearing the D note, tension 2, as a tension note that wants to move. If you can do that on its own with no chords, then you can explore putting it on top of chords. Some easy ones to get started with. You can rewatch the video, just do any of the ones I talked about here, but C major, this obviously works over C major, because why wouldn't it? What did we do? A flat major 7, sharp 5. B flat dominant 7 gives us the 13 sharp 11 and the 9 in the melody, so we're actually tonicizing the upper structure of this chord. Which other ones did we do? D minor, F major 7. So those are 5 different very common situations where we might see a melodic structure like this. C major triad, tension 2. Okay. I need to wrap up and run. It's 10:30. Let me see if there's any comments here. Oh yeah, Lydian dominant, yeah. You picked it out. That's the traditional thinking of it, but again, Lydian dominant implies what I refer to as a very democratic approach to the notes. Right? In Lydian dominant, all 7 notes are equal. Here, they're not equal. Here, there's a specific resolution point, which is not B flat, nor is it F. It's C, because that's the triad we're focused on right now. So the C note is sort of the top of the totem pole. It's the most important note. I call it melodic do, or the melodic root note. Then you have the E and the G note, the 3rd and the 5th of the C triad, that are just underneath that. So you have C, E, G, that's the triad. Those are the 3 most important notes. Then you have the D note, right? The D note is the major 3rd of the chord, but it's tension 2 in our quadratonic. It's the primary tension note. Why is it primary? Because it's the 3rd of B flat. So it helps us imply the sound of that dominant without letting go of this melodic structure. But then here's the thing. All 12 notes exist in this totem pole. C at the top, then E and G, then the D note. So we have the triad and the tension note. Then we could say that the other, diatonic notes to this Lydian dominant mode are on the totem pole, but all the other remaining chromatic notes are there also. They're all present. I think I was playing this while I was improvising. Right, I can just run around chromatically because I can see the skeleton frame of the C major triad. I can literally get away with anything as long as I return back to these structural notes. So the 4 notes, it doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a 1/3 of all of the pitches available to us. We have 12 chromatic notes, so a 1/3 of them are perfect, 2/3 of them are all usable, but should be kind of placed inside the context of this sound. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. Play around with it, Michael. I think you'll kind of hear what I'm talking about. Others, A flat major 7, sharp 5. If you just play it as a shell voicing, then you don't have to worry about the sharp 5. Root 3rd 7th. Okay. A flat major 7, sharp 5 is a really good one. This is the primary quadratonic, the most important quadratonic for that sound. B flat dominant, D minor, F major. If any members can think of any that I'm leaving out, I'm sure there's some others in here that I'm not thinking about. Those are good ones to get started with. Okay. Those are the only comments it's showing me right now, even though it says there's 8 comments. I'm only seeing 4 for some reason because Facebook's whack. Anyways, this was fun. Keep those ears open. My friend Peter Bernstein, who I played and studied with a lot, once told me, if your ears are improving, your musicianship is improving. Period. Okay? We can pick up all the technique and muscle memory we want, but if our ear is not opening and developing and growing, our musicianship isn't opening and developing and growing. Because otherwise we're like a painter, wearing a blindfold, or a cook that can't taste food. This is our means of connecting what we hear in our mind with what we see on the fretboard with the sounds we produce to the world. So while it's not the most luxurious thing to practice, it's super important. So let's hit it, and I will see you guys tomorrow for some more fun. Thanks for hanging.